Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's Insights Tech Showcase, where we're going to be talking about all things synthetic sample. Before I hand it on over to Lenny, I just want to remind you of a few things. First, we've got that chat box. Make sure to drop your LinkedIn. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to connect. Next, we've got that Q&A box. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them there, and we'll be sure to get back to you. So, Lenny, I will now hand it on over to you.
All right. Thanks, Bridget, and hi, everybody. Welcome to this tech showcase on synthetic sample, which has been quite the hot topic since the advent of generative AI. And that's probably a little bit of a warning before we dive in. Whatever we talk about today literally could change tomorrow based on the rapidity of change related to generative AI. But I think we'll have a good foundational knowledge base here to work on no matter what happens. All right, so what is synthetic sample? Well, maybe a better way to think about it is synthetic data. And effectively, it's data that mimics characteristics of a population or a persona. We use it to augment or to replace human sample. And it works in both quantitative and qualitative research. And, we've been looking at these ideas for a really long time. Lookalike models, personas, segmentations. It's a variation on that on steroids. So basically, the way we're talking about it today is utilizing a large language model or a neural network AI system trained on an existing data set. It learns the data, it learns the characteristics, correlations, key relationships that drive attitudes. And once that is done, you create the synthetic sample set. It possesses the features of the original one. It has synthesized those, and then it simulates responses to questions. This has been out there being done today. There are commercial applications that are absolutely utilizing this. It's not made up. It's not mock data. It is a model that duplicates based upon the information given to it, how a real population or individual would respond based upon the information fed in. So it is absolutely viable. I have seen projects done utilize synthetic sample compared side by side to traditional research, and it is scary how accurate it can be. But we'll get into that, and as well as some of the limitations as well. But let's just start from that foundational principle that we're utilizing AI off of existing data to create a synthetic panel of respondents that is as accurate as the information that it was based off of. So it's been around for a long time in some form or fashion. In the 70s, we used that to overcome computational limitations, to information demand. Things like models and agents were certainly a piece of that. In the 90s, it was used for census data, so it could be shared without endangering privacy. During the 2010s, with the advent of big data, right, that was the foundational components when we started building out these models utilizing neural networks that are computational systems that function theoretically like a brain does in terms of making connections and at computational speed. And there's certainly things that have been done with synthetic data vaults, which are used to take really secure data and position it so that it's beyond being hacked. Arguably, a lot of the things that we see happening with LLMs right now would exist in that type of framework. But there's also companies like Palantir, for instance, that do an awful lot of work for the Department of Defense and government agencies. They also use synthetic sample to an extent that's locked away and very secure. But it's not brand new. It just suddenly became much more accessible. So can you trust it? Well, the question we would have is, can you trust those analysts you hired? I mean, both are learning from data. They interpret it based on their training and experience. Everybody has their own biases, including LLMs. and that can be amplified. Sometimes we can, inflate some findings that maybe not as relevant, or we can focus on the wrong things in the data. So humans do all of these things too. Now, the question is that, human analysts learn as they go, and arguably with synthetic sample, the LLMs are learning those same things. So, here's the comfort level component. Humans you can train, we can address, we can work through how they think about things, and we can give them the skill sets, and there's a way to check what's going on. In AI, unless we're validating all of those things, which I believe that we're in that process now of running side-by-side comparisons, it is a black box, and it's not so easy to identify whether there's a problem. But in general, you can think about synthetic sample as your AI analyst that is going through kind of those same processes an analyst would go through on the back end, except it's happening during the interrogatory phase as you're working through the responses with the sample. It certainly has use cases. It can supplement when there's sparse human samples. So if we have hard to reach populations, then it certainly can help augment that. It can reduce survey length. We only have to ask the questions we don't have the answers to. If we have the right data set, it can amplify underrepresented minorities. So if we've trained it on responses to a specific population that's hard to reach for research, it can be a way to assess what those populations would say. It certainly democratizes data access. It can give more people more tools without leaking PII. It addresses privacy regulations, assuming that the core training data has met those privacy issues. Then, synthetic sample has no challenges at all. You can experiment and test new things with it that maybe you wouldn't necessarily do with humans because of the cost implications. Replacing human panels, there's conversations about that. Maybe long term, I personally don't think that we're quite there yet, but theoretically, it could for some business use cases. It certainly opens up the door to leveraging existing data, synthesizing data sets. Think about longitudinal or tracking or benchmarking data, and using that to create these synthetic personas that you could leverage in new ways. And of course, it's always on. It's always available at any time. So, and it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot faster. So those are the drivers of why we're thinking about this. There are pragmatic benefits that we have to just recognize and embrace on how this solution can be applied. And the companies that you're going to see here today are on the forefront of doing that. I guarantee you, your mind's going to be blown as you see some of the examples that they have. Now, certainly that note, the companies that are doing this are doing lots of different things, both quant and qual. They can customize this, so you're looking at synthetic versions of key segments of personas. They can develop those populations for you as long as the right data set's available so that it can respond to survey questions. Gives you the application to or the ability to be able to test as you go, kind of on demand, which these companies are providing to you, and a lot of tools to analyze the results from structured and unstructured data. Now, we're still talking about a concept, although it is more than something that's still out there, right? We're exploring this. It's a new and existing technology that has a history, as we've talked about, and now we're trying to find fit for purpose. And we're exploring what are the use cases. When is it better than existing tools? When is it a complement to existing tools? And when is it not appropriate to use? The we're going to be going through that process for a while. Um, and it's kind of the same idea that now when we're doing a research study, we understand here's our existing information, what's missing. When you're, let's say, running Bayesian models, um, that same type of idea is applied here. That may be a good framework to think about, right? It's an experimental process that we must embrace and start thinking about how we utilize it to answer these questions about fit for purpose. Uh, could it be as good or better than a human sample? I think there's some things we have to figure out. People use Likert scales differently. Look at some of the, let's say, the regional differences. We know that, let's say, in Asian countries, culturally, that impacts how they utilize Likert scales versus in the U.S. So there's an example we all know about. So we have to recognize how rich is the LLM in incorporating nuances of the persona that may or may not all be true across an entire population. Social desirability, certainly, we'll have to see. I have not seen an experiment yet on a socially sensitive topic. I'm sure they're being run. I just haven't seen the results. So that's one of the things we'll need to pay attention to. Let's say the CDC behavioral risk factor surveillance survey, the BRFIS survey. It does examine lots of sensitive health topics and things like teenage drug use and sex and all that stuff that's kind of sensitive. I would love to see very soon a side-by-side comparison between synthetic sample and some type of data set like BRFIS. Obviously, our samples don't always perfectly represent the market, so we're going to have that same problem. If we don't have the right sample, then we're not going to get the right answers that represent the populations that we're interested in. So we have to factor that in. Depending on the topic, if it's a very niche topic, let's say a niche population on a niche topic, then there may not be enough real data to train the LLM. So, there's a data scarcity potential issue there where it's just not going to be the appropriate solution because we don't have the right assets to train it. If from an analytical standpoint, it's data in, data out, garbage in, garbage out. Assume the data is good, then the outputs should be stable, and then it's going to be prone to any of the same issues that we have today, which is really the human. Are we asking the right questions? Are we introducing our own biases into the questions or into interpreting the results? Are we looking at the wrong things and getting excited about those like outliers? I have not seen examples of the propensity for synthetic sample to hallucinate. And if you haven't heard of that phenomenon, it is in LLMs, things like ChatGPT, et cetera, to make things up. That does not mean that it is not there, but I have not seen examples of that. While we're going through this early testing and validation phase, that's something we want to be conscious of, to make sure that we're not seeing things that because the system is just designed to answer questions, that it's maybe not supplementing with external information and anticipating what it thinks the next right answer should be, even though it's not doesn't have the data itself to validate that. So, let's be conscious of that. And that in no means should be a trying to dissuade anybody from embracing and utilizing these technologies. I'm trying to be pragmatic and realistic about where we are, but it's still it's a really great solution that is emerging, and we need to learn how to engage with it because it's only going to get better over time. So even some of the concerns we have right now about data scarcity or about the potential hallucination or those type of issues, those will be resolved as we progress from here. They're engineering issues, and as a species, we're pretty good at solving engineering issues. It really can be transformative. It can transform your insights work. You can invest more time and resources into generating impact. It will reduce cost. It certainly addresses the speed concerns. It is scalable as long as we have the right data to train from. It is very complementary to existing data. It's flexible, lets us just do all types of things that we wouldn't necessarily spend money on from a research standpoint. But we need to be careful, again, as we said, understand how we're working with it, what data is used, how is it trained, are there gaps we need to work with, biases. Some of you may have seen recently the issue as Google rolled out their Gemini product, that there were some obvious biases that were introduced into the platform, particularly with their image generation. That was a live beta test. Google learned an awful lot that they probably went a little bit too far in programming some of their models with some specific considerations that maybe went too far and were limiting the authenticity and accuracy of the results. So these are black box solutions, and we need to recognize that that's something happening under the skin. Companies are learning and going through that as they go. But if you have doubts, really think about this. What if it was the only solution that you had? What if running these simulations helped you streamline the human research so it could be more effective? So you could focus on the unknowns. You could focus on the aha moments rather than, let's say, asking a ton of screening questions and going through that whole process and repeating the same things longitudinally. Instead, you're able to say, all right, we've got the longitudinal information here. We have a good sense of this. Now let's probe. Let's understand. Let's look for the deeper insights. And I think there's real opportunities for people to do research on research right now by running these side by sides. And I would encourage everybody here to, at the very least, leave this session with the commitment to run your own side-by-side validation studies. Work with the partners that you're going to see here, engage with them, run the studies that you can appropriately, utilize their solutions, and then go ahead and say, all right, now we're going to spend a little bit of money and do this side-by-side and see for yourself. It's the only way that we're going to get better overall as an industry. So it's probably enough for me, a little bit of soapbox and apologies for that. I think it's a really exciting topic. It is interesting. It is transformative. It is here. It is here to stay. So let's engage. Let's figure out what the best use case and fit for purpose opportunity is, and go forth and have a great time as researchers. So that's it for me. Enjoy the rest of the Tech Showcase. Bye-bye.